Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space. Why the Galavrck are no more. Written by Shadis Skira. Lana, looking around the council chamber. The 50-odd racers looked uncomfortable as they waited. The ambassador of the Larishi stood at the podium. By every account of her people's greatest minds stated that he and all of his race should be enslaved by now. And yet here he was, despite all calculations. What's more, he was asking for a race they met while at war with the Xander race to be allowed into the council. The Larishi had stated that these humans, as they called them, had apparently been the ones to help them win the war. And what more, all they asked for in turn was to be introduced to the rest of the council. Odd, she thought, for a race to have effectively thrown a war of annihilation into complete victory for a would-be loser and only asked for an introduction was absurd. The humans are kind, helpful race, and are eager for peace. I and my race do believe that the human race will offer many wonderful things to the council and the galaxy as a whole. Lariche spoke, glancing about the room, eyes landing on her. She felt like he wanted to say something, but continued on his speech. To quote the human phrase that they will seek out life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness with an energy that'll leave us dizzying. But I am not their ambassador, so allow me to introduce Ambassador Davian Smith to the stand, Lariche said, and he gestured to the door. Almost no cue to the door opened, and the human walked in, dressed in textiles that covered most of his form. Not that impressive, she sniggers to herself. It was barely her height, only about 6 units tall. 4 limbs ended in fingers and a patch of red fur on his head. Smooth, soft skin resting on what she could only assume was an endoskeleton. She reached down for her translator. Of course, she would need it to understand the human. "Thank you, Ambassador Zalznik," the human said in galactic common. Oh, it speaks, she thought. "And thank you for taking the time to speak to me, esteemed members of the council. I am here this cycle to request membership to the Grand Party, so the Terran Union will gain the support of this council," it said, as a curled communications orifice at them. Friendly signal, her translator informed her. "I will be frank and forward. Humanity's first step into the stars was not good ones for us." He shifted slightly, discomfited. "Good, it knows its place. We had stumbled into war. The war was between the Lariche Star Conclave and the Zendar Empire. It was a mistake. We had no hand in the war." It paused again. Sadness. "However, the Zendar Empire had refused our attempts to rectify our mistake, and so we began to defend the small part of this great galaxy that we had claimed. We believed that in time this war would end, and we could call out and clear the air." He glanced over to her left. Hate. "What is it looking to?" She followed its gaze. It was affixed on the Xandar ambassador. "Is he cowering?" she asked inwardly. The Xandar were a proud warrior race, more than a match for most races. Not so much hers, but most of the races at the council. Yet it was a Xandar shrunk down, tucked in its neck and folded its frills of the crown. Even in hopeless engagement with her people, the Xandar didn't react like this, and a new race to the galaxy. "Fools!" she scoffed to herself. "This race was like no other race that hadn't come before." The human continued. "We, the Terran Union, have found war amongst the stars, and we feel only sorrow. To see such wonder and yet be crushed by the disappointment is terrible. When the Lariche came, we believed ourselves doomed. We awaited their ships to attack and prayed to our goddess for our deliverance, for this fate." Its gaze shifted to the Lariche ambassador. "Camaraderie. It's friends with the Lariche. They are doomed. And yet the Lariche asked if we needed help. We found hope that day, and so humanity made a singular vow that day, and in one voice asked them to take us to the stars. Humanity is still in the beginning stages of FTL, and we are still mastering shield technology. Our few ships, the ones we have, are being retrofitted to support these new advancements made with the help of the Lariche. However, we have to ensure that 2 things about humanity is made clear, and it is not without reason. That reason applies to both what I would like to address before this council." It said, sorrow. Humanity has by two things, two messages that we would like for you to understand. Before I state what they are, I would like to address why they are so. It plugged in a data chip into the podium and moved its hand, sending her and everyone a file. Humanity has laws in regard to warfare and how it should be conducted. We humans don't like war. We believe that it is in everyone's best interest to agree to the document that I have just sent you.
Oh, how nice. A new toy for the Empire to shred at home, she muttered. Beep, beep. And someone has just agreed to its request. Let's see. She looked at the document and rubbed her eyes in amazement. The first signature was from the Xander. Beep, beep. And then the Larashi. This document is a ratified agreement to the terms of war and how it should be conducted, amended to include all sapient life. I will summarize it as it is long. In essence, it states that only people to be attacked or harmed in war are to be solely combatants. An attack against non-combatants is a breach of these rules. Furthermore, any use of later stated forms of war are also the breach of these rules. In the event that either of these rules are broken, the offended nation can disregard the rules and engage in total war. It stopped again, taking in a long pull from its water. Also, with our armed forces, we have a role called medic. These soldiers are to be considered non-combatants and are not to be harmed. If one is harmed or attacked, no mercy will be shown to the attacker or his squad. It stopped. Regiment. It looked around the chamber as the others read the document. And so I lay before you the reason for this document. During the war with the Xander and the Larashi, an orbital defense cannon fired on a Xanderan scout ship, believing it to be an asteroid on a collision course with our colony. On the planetoid YS5-3, Ganymede. It explained. Pain. It is in distress over a colony. Weak.
He shuddered. The colony soon learned of their mistake and contracted our homeworld and began to learn all we could from their databank. When the Xander fleet arrived, a message was sent to them, and it read as such. We deeply regret the loss we have caused and hope that you can not look badly upon humanity. We ask for your forgiveness and ask that you show mercy. This message was sent 4 times as their fleet approached our colony. We did all we could with our limited technology. Grief, pain, anger, hate. The Xanderan fleet ignored all hails. Its eye drifted off and glanced the colony from orbit. It roared in the chamber. We humans do not want to fight because we believe that the stars held a promise of peace. We lost 2,000 souls that day, and we loathe the Xandar for what they did.
She leaned over to the Galavrck ambassador. Oh, no, it's anger, she said with a chuckle, which the Galavrck shared in kind. The human ambassador took a deep breath, eyes like cold ether glass, and calm in his released his breath. I suppose you all are curious as to why I am so angry. So allow me to explain. As you all know, YS5 is a gas giant in the space sector of YS9-2. YS3, Earth, is humanity's homeworld. The room busted out in shouts and roars. Almost every ambassador was on their feet at this revelation, and she understood why. Humanity are Deathworlders. Her adrenal glands were already pumping when she heard, but something struck her. The Larashi ambassador invited him. The only reason the war had begun was because the lost Deathworlders they met nearly destroyed their race. So why invite them? The room calmed down. The human continued, I understand and respect your fear. However, humanity has a much interest in war and conquest as a young Larashi has for swimming. Humanity has learned from its world, a harsh and sometimes unforgiving place. The value of life, to us, every single life, regardless of what form it takes, is sacred. We have shared our warlike mentality when we stepped to the stars. However, to our dismay, we found the galaxy at war. And so, I shall move on to our only 2 statements to this galaxy. The first is simple. Never again! This is simple. As for why we chose it too, the Xandar killed 2,031 souls on Ganymede. The Larashi had stayed our hand against the Xander. At the final hour, as the Larashi fleet of Zengran, they pleaded for us to not become the monsters we saw in the Xander. And so, never again will we stay our hand. Never again will we show mercy at the final hour. Never again will we allow someone to kill our civilians. It roared again, before taking a deep breath. And the second statement is more complex, but I will elaborate in a second. We haven't forgotten. Lana sat in her seat. Every nano-unit of her being screamed at her to run. But why? It can't be the human. Her kind has dealt with Deathworlders before. She felt her skin clench together to protect from an unseen predator. This statement is from our armed forces, and to be frank, it is more of a protection of your nations than ours. It said in a calm, collected coldness that a translator said was truthful. Though your technology level is much higher than humanity's, and our fleet is still growing, I am afraid to inform you all that humanity's understanding of warfare and how war is to be fought is far more advanced than any of your races. In fact, the tactics and battle strategies you use and openly deploy, we read about in our history. And those battles were fought 1,500 Terran years ago, on a Deathworld. Truth. It is mad, she thought. To think that they kept fighting was insane. The battle line and tactics her people employed were used due to how well they were and the weapons they used. She glanced down to the document still open on her terminal and began to scroll down. Also, the human ambassador said, the weapons technology that this Galactic Council deems the standard weapon of war to us is a high-tech relic of a bygone era. Had you come when the French Revolution happened, we would have loved them. However, as it stands at the moment, we can employ far more devastation, weapons, and tactics than you. And so, I state again, we haven't forgotten. If you come for Terran Union, you'll find no battlefield you muster on, no rows of Terran linemen ready to trade laser fire, no cannonade to fire upon you as you march to our line. You'll be fighting us as we had fought when our planet began to die on us. The chamber was still. It was unnerving. She looked to the Xander ambassador, only to see that he had shrunk so much in his seat that he was practically falling to the floor. Then she looked at the Larishi. His feathers stood on ends, his eyes wide and snout raised ever so slightly. Joy! He was happy. She could not let this human insult her people's way of war go unanswered, and she gathered her thought. How dare you! A booming roar came from the Galavrck ambassador. How dare you come to us and offer us peace, and then in the same cycle insult our institutions of war? He stood up. You dare to enter here and dictate to us who can and can't be killed in war? He boomed as he stepped towards the human. You dare to challenge us with war, to threaten us? The Galavrck towered over the human, his forearms behind his back, ready to strike the human. This'll do. We can watch and learn, and then after the Galavrck start fighting, we'll strike, she giggled. It would be easy from form a tactic after opening battles of this war a few times. I do! The human bellowed, almost as loud as the ambassador. I dare because I know war. I have witnessed the war the Xander unleashed. I dare because I see wars you wage. I have seen the loss of life you waste. I dare because I have felt the sorrow and the parent losing their child, of a husband losing their partner. I dare. In this place you stare and bellow at the lost colonist of New Hope. I dare, because I have nothing left to lose here, and neither do my people. The Galavrck stepped back. I demand the rights of war, he said. The Galavrcks demand to be the ones to subject these lowly humans. The ambassador said, looking over his shoulders at the council. Does anyone challenge my right? He called. No one raised their hands. Lana looked to the Lasharishi ambassador. He said, shaking his head, and then to the Zendar, who, as his translator stated, was praying for the Galavrck. And then she looked to the human. He had curled back his ovaries and revealed a row of sharp fangs, such a predatory display. like the kind she saw at the zoo from the fearsome predators of her people's past. A chill ran up then down her nervous system. "Then it is to be war between humanity and the Galavrck?" the human asked, like a seasoned warrior would ask his battle clan. "And what will be the terms of engagement?"
"We will tear and rip your people, your males killed, the females sold as slaves on your worlds to be used, and younglings tossed from the airlocks into a hungry void. We will show a war you can't imagine. Weapons that will rend your worlds to bleed, and war that will consume your people. And we will rid the galaxy of another Deathworld race vermin,"
yelled the Galavrickan. The human looked to its right, and then back to the Galavrck, and then in a calm voice with that wide, predatory grin. "You sure you don't want to sign that document before we start?" End of story. I'd quickly like to thank all the T5 channel members and patrons. Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Lord Azrakal, Holly Sister, Dragzoon WRE, and Ambrose Catel. Thank you very much.